How's it going, everyone? I hope you all are doing well. All right. Were there any questions from the homework last time? I believe it was just over section 2.2. Hope you all had a good weekend. Okay. Today we're going to look at section 2.4, which is over circles. And that will actually wrap up what we need to cover for our first test. So what we'll do is on Wednesday, we'll go ahead and do the review for that first test. I'll make sure. I don't think I uploaded it before. I meant to, so I apologize for that. Let me do that real quick. Yeah, I didn't upload the review yet, so I apologize for that. Let's see. It's in here somewhere. Just put it on the desktop. That's right. Okay. So, that's our review for test 1. And when you go into Canvas and you look at it, it'll list out the problems and basically how the problems will be asked. There can be some show your work problems and some multiple choice problems. And on these problems, for instance, where it's show your work, you'll be expected to include an image with your work, based on whatever work you've done for that problem. You'll take a picture or scan it and then upload it. And then for the multiple choice ones, you can just pick the answer, but you could also upload an image of your work, because even if you don't get the answer right, then you'll be able to at least get partial credit for the work that you have done. So I do encourage you, even on the multiple choice questions on the test, to upload your work, and that way, in the instance that you don't actually get the problem right, then we can actually get some extra credit for that. So anyway, and it did include a bonus, and this is misformatted. I'll make sure that's fixed on the test. Actually, the formulas I'll probably put in like the header. It'll be a quiz in Canvas. No, it'll be set up as a quiz in Canvas, so you can do the work in there, and I'll give you a little extra time um, to account for the fact that you have to be able to scan and upload your work for that. So, anyway. Okay, so that's in our files now. And I may later put that in like its own little folder, but for now I'll just leave everything right there. And I also have the key to that review, but what I'll do is I'll go over the review in class on Wednesday. We'll just work through those questions. Yeah, it'll be very similar to what's on the actual exam. Mm-hmm. You can do an image or a PDF. It doesn't really make a difference. Just whatever you enter in. If you just want to do a photo, that's fine. Anyway, once we go over the exam, the review questions on Wednesday's class, I'll upload a copy of the key to the review at least. And then probably starting Wednesday night, I'll make the test available, and then you'll have through like the following Tuesday to take it. So a pretty big window, but in the actual test itself, you'll only be given like 2 hours, I would estimate, because we have an hour and a half for class, and then we would change that to 2 hours just to allow you time to upload all the images necessary. So that's what I'm thinking right now. But like you'll see in the review, it's a mix of show your work problems and multiple choice. And in the review, it also shows you what formulas you can expect to be given. That way, you know what you need to focus on beyond what's there. Well, I mean, the good news is I will give you partial credit. And I think if you do well in the review and you can understand the review, even if you don't necessarily do well in the review the first time through, after we go over it, after you look at it again, hopefully you'll understand and be confident enough that when you go into the test, you'll be okay. And that's the hope. So. Okay. Let me switch back. Sorry. Anyway, so we have that to look forward to. And then next Monday, we won't have a formal class meeting because that would technically be our test day. But, rather than having like a formal test day, we'll have, like I said, just a window of about 6 days where you can take the test sometime during that 6-day period. And, if you needed to take it during our class time, that would be fine. Anyhow, but let me know if you have any questions on that. I know the first test always comes with the most trepidation, most concern on the part of students, because you're not sure what it's going to be like yet, especially for a class that you're not entirely comfortable with, maybe. But I hope we get through this and everyone comes out doing fine. So, anyway, so today we're going to look at section 2.4. And I think my camera's too high. There we go. Alright, so we talked a little bit about circles last time, but nothing really in detail, I guess. Some of the basic elements of graphing circles, and I think that's the extent to which we talked about it. But in section 2.4, we introduce, first of all, the concept of graphing a circle, which I think this is what we kind of talked about last time. So if we're looking at graphing a circle, it requires knowing the radius and the location of the center. Okay. So, first off, let's just look at an example. What if we have a radius of 3 with a center located at 1, 2? What is a docs file? Sorry, Brock. Is that like the iPad file? I had to download a thing to get. Oh, Word file. I don't actually have Word on my home computer. I have Open Office instead, so it may or may not open that. So just a caution. Yeah. Okay. I mean, if you use PDF, that's fine, because even though I don't have Acrobat on my computer, every browser opens a PDF file nowadays, so yeah. Okay, so we have a center located at 1, 2 with a radius of 2. So the first thing we do is graph the location of the center, which is 1 right and 2 up from the origin. And then from there, now this is the very center of the circle, so the circle doesn't actually include this point, it's everything around this point at a radius of 3 essentially. Well, that's exactly what's happening here. We need to find every point that's a radius of 3 from this center point. Now, radius of 3 is actually a whole lot of points that fall into that category, but the easiest ones for us to graph is if we take this point and we go up 3, we go 3 to the right, we go 3 down, and 3 to the left. Okay, so from our center point we went 3 up, 3 right, 3 down, 3 left. Now these resulting points should all be on the circle. And then we can just sketch in the circle from there. Oh, I got you. Well, if it's a DOC file, I can actually open that with Open Office, because that's what I have to do, and that's why I had to download it. So, I just wasn't familiar with the DOX extension. Wow. Okay. Um, you can. It'll be able. You'll be able to upload it directly into the test while you're taking it. So at the end of each problem, you'll have the like for the multiple choice ones, you'll have the option of uploading an additional file, and the ones that are just short answer, you'll just be able to upload the file, and that would be your answer to that question. And having it done one problem at a time makes it easier for me to go through and grade them, personally. Um, so that would be most convenient. Okay. So one other example here with the circles. It'll be no, we could talk about this now. Let me let's do this. So what I could do is I could create a quiz, and I'm not going to actually publish this, otherwise there'd be a lot of confusion, I imagine. So I'll just make sure it's practice. Shuffle the answers. I'll have a due date. So, I mean, this is basically the kind of availability that you'll see for your test. Okay. And so, I'll go create a question. I'll make it a file upload question. Okay. And I'll say, for instance, we would, this is question 1. Solve following equation. We'll say x squared minus 3x minus 4 equals 0. Okay. And I'll just update the equation, and I'll save test. Now, it's unpublished, so y'all can't see it yet, because I don't want to cause a panic or anything. But we can preview this. Now, I'll give you this prompt. Okay, solve this equation, and you'd write out the answer on your paper. And then once you wrote out the answer in your paper, you take a picture or scan it. I know there's different apps that people have in their phones that actually scan documents rather than taking just a picture and make it a PDF. You'll choose a file and then go from there. Okay, you'll choose a file and then upload it. So it shouldn't be that bad. But then, like the multiple choice questions would also have a place for you to select a multiple choice answer, and then have the additional option of uploading a file that shows your work if you like. You're not required to on the multiple choice ones, it'll be an optional one, but I do recommend it. Okay. Not that one. That one. Okay. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. I've been playing through the Far Cry games on my other Twitch channel. So, anyway. So, continuing. I don't know what else I wanted to do here. Let's do one with the radius of 5. Center is located at, let's say, -3, 0. Okay. Again, the goal is just to sketch the graph here. So -3, 0 is the center. So we'll plot where the center is. And now we want all the points that are a radius of 5 from that center point. Now, that means we'll have to go 5 points up and to the right, down 5, and left 5. And then we'll draw a circle, or, well, I almost had a circle until I didn't. And then we draw a semblance of a circle, and we'll go from there. In 3D, you would also have a z variable for the third dimension. Yeah. That is Calculus 3, that we go over that. Yeah, it would just add that extra dimension vertically compared to everything else. And the equations are very similar. Okay. So that's graphing a circle, and as we can tell from graphing a circle that, again, the two requirements are having a radius and having the location of the center. But those won't, of course, be given to us. So let's look at equations of circles. We have what's called the general form first, which is not that, x squared plus y squared plus ax plus by plus c is equal to 0. Now in general form, that means that, we know the x squared and the y squared will have the same coefficient. It has to be the same coefficient in order to be a circle. But then we may have other values that are multiplied by x, y, and then also a constant that are present. We also have what's called the standard form, which is x minus h in parentheses squared plus y minus k in parentheses squared equals r squared. Now, this particular equation has h and k, those are actually the location of the center. And as you may expect, r is actually the value for the radius. So what we generally run into here is that if we can take an equation in this form and convert it to this form, then we can figure out what the location of the center and the radius are, and then we know exactly where the circle is located on the plane. So beyond that is really just a question of how we get from here to here. And turns out it's not the easiest process, unfortunately. Let's look at an example. For an example, we have x squared plus y squared plus 4x minus 6y minus 12 is equal to 0. Now, the approach that we like to do, there's a multiple step approach here, unfortunately. First thing we'll do is we'll move the constant to the right, which means our minus 12. We'll go ahead and add that over. And we'll go ahead and group the x variables and the y variables together, respectively. So we have an x squared and we have a 4x. We have a y squared minus 6y, and it's equal to 12 now on the right-hand side. Okay, so that's always the first step, is move the constant over and then group the x's and then group the y's. Now, what we need to do next, this is the most important step, is we'll go ahead and complete the square in both parentheses. Okay. So with x squared plus 4x, we need to figure out, when we say complete the square, we're saying, okay, what number needs to be added to that so that the resulting trinomial is a perfect square. And when we say a trinomial is a perfect square, that means if we factor it, we get two identical factors. So instead of having x squared plus 4x plus a number, we'll just have x plus a number in parentheses squared instead. And we'll have something similar for the y variables also. The goal still is to get to this format where we have a binomial squared plus a binomial squared equals the radius squared. So before we can get a binomial squared, we need a third term here that makes it work out perfectly. And that's the goal of this process right here, is to figure out what third term do we need to make that factor perfectly. Now the way that we choose this number is based entirely on the number in front of the linear variable, in this case x. So having a 4 there, we take whatever number this is, divide it by 2, which gives us a 2, and we'll take that result 2 and then square it, and that gives us a 4. Okay, so that is x squared plus 4x, and then we'll take that 4 that we just found and add that in. Okay. Now, taking that same approach, we can apply it to this other term with the y's. We have y squared minus 6y. What number will we end up needing to add here? The pattern is always the same. These won't always match, though. That was actually just a coincidence in this case. But the pattern is we take this number, divide it by 2, and then square the resulting number, and then that's the number that we then put into the equation. 9, right, August? Because again, we take our 6 and divide it by 2, get 3, and take our 3 and then square that to get 9. We'll put 9 in there. Okay. Now, that's not quite everything, but let's focus on that first before we move on. Um, Again, the pattern is we take this number, we divide by 2, always divide by 2, and then always square whatever number we get as a result of that. Okay. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 3 squared is 9, so we put a 9 there. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 2 squared is 4. That's the only time that happens that they're the same number, otherwise they'll typically be different numbers. Yes, I did ignore the negative here, but if we took negative 6 and divided by 2 and got negative 3, even if that was a negative 3 and we squared it, it became a positive. So negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3, negative 3 squared is still positive 9. That's why I ignored the negative there, because it was going to come out to be a positive number regardless, which I should have mentioned a little bit sooner, but yes. Okay. Right. Now, remember we still have our 12 on the other side, but the issue is by putting a plus 4 here and by putting a plus 9 here, we've added numbers to the left-hand side of the equation. Now, in order for this equation to remain balanced, we also have to add those same numbers to the right-hand side of the equation. Okay. So it's like we added 4 to both sides and we added 9 to both sides, but these two we wanted in a specific location to serve a specific purpose. Okay. Now, anyone have any questions up to there? By far, this is the most important step in the whole problem, is being able to go from this equation to this equation. Okay. All right. Now, in our next step, we need to factor these trinomials. So we have x squared plus 4x plus 4. So we have two numbers that multiply to 4 and two numbers that add to 4. What would that factorization be? Two and two, yeah. Let's make it plus 2 and plus 2. Good. What about with our y's? Same thing here. We should be able to find two numbers that multiply to 9 and add up to a negative 6. Negative 3 and negative 3. Good. Now, because those are identical factors, we could go ahead and say this is x plus 2 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 25. Okay. Now, again, if you want to, you can actually just skip this step from here to here if you feel comfortable. But I just want to make sure you all saw the step in between on my notes. So if you come back and look at it, you'll be able to hopefully understand it. But again, the whole concept of why we or how we got this 4 in the first place and how we got this 9 is to set up this situation where it factors into identical terms, which we can write as a single binomial squared. And this process always works when we want to find that setup. Basically, is we took this number and divided it by 2 and then squared it, and that basically makes everything else happen from there. Now, here's where it's a little bit tricky still. If we go back and look at the standard form, our equation was x minus h squared, y minus k squared equals r squared, where h and k is the center and r is equal to the radius. Now, h and k, notice that even though this is minus h and minus k, we said positive h and positive k are the center. So what's happening is we're actually taking the opposite of both of those numbers. So whatever is here, we take its opposite. Whatever is here, we take its opposite. And this number on the right-hand side is r squared, so to get the radius, we take the square root of whatever number is over there. So first of all, what is the center of this circle? Two and negative 3. Not quite. The numbers are right, but there's something else that we have to pay attention to. Negative 2 and 3. Again, whenever we find h and k, we take the opposite of these two numbers. So if this is x plus 2, we want negative 2. If this is y minus 3, we want positive 3. And really what we can think of there, if it helps, is we were trying to figure out, okay, what value of x makes this 0? Well, negative 2 would make that 0, and positive 3 would make this one 0. What about a radius? What would the radius be? If this number represents r squared. R equals 5. It's a little strange why they do that. Basically, it's saying that what's a good way of saying this? Essentially, the center of a circle is basically located at whatever values are going to give us 0 and 0. Okay? So if the circle is right at the origin, then we won't have anything added or subtracted because it's already on the origin. By shifting the circle left, right, up, and down, the x plus 2 shifts it left or right, and x or y minus 3 shifts it up or down. In this case, plus actually means to the left, and minus 3 means up, which seems counterintuitive, but basically we're thinking, okay, how far do we have to go to get to the center was left 2 and then up 3. Okay. It's the same concept with, anytime we plot x-intercepts for anything, like if we're graphing a parabola, we're going to see this a lot in chapter 3 and 4 when we do our graphing. Things kind of work oppositely at times, which is confusing. So, and even if it doesn't make sense, we'll work on this more as we go forward. But essentially, what's happening here is we're taking the opposite of, or maybe the better way is thinking like, okay, if we set x plus 2 equal to 0, we just subtract the 2 over, so x equals -2. That gives us the first part of the center. And if we set y minus 3 equals 0, we add the 3 over, and we get k is 3. Now whatever number is over here, we take the square root, and we get the 5. So square root of 25 is 5. It does take some practice. Even then, you may feel comfortable doing the problem, but you may not have 100% understanding. But I mean, it's a goal. It's a journey. So. Okay. Now, this is actually what your problem on the exam will look like. Is I'll give you an equation such as this, and I'll ask you to find the center and the radius. Now I believe I actually made it a multiple choice question, so that should help you out. But even then, I would hope that you go ahead and turn in your work just to be safe. Make sure you get all the credit you can. So what the answers would read is A, B, C, and D, and then have different combinations of centers and radii based on that. A problem like this is really difficult, I think, to reverse engineer the answer from the question. That's why I don't have a problem putting the answers there. The formula will be provided. If you look on the review that I uploaded, it's in there. That's the circle formula is in there for the standard form specifically, which is what we'll need. So no need to panic. You shouldn't worry about formulas in general. If there is a formula that we need to remember, I will let you know. Most of the time they'll be provided, except for very specific circumstances. What's more important is not knowing the formula, but knowing when and how to apply the formula. Like we know that, like I'll give you the formula for the discriminant, b squared minus 4ac, but you'll have to know, okay, what does it mean when the discriminant is positive versus when it's 0 versus when it's negative, and that makes a difference there. So there's nuance there. It's not going to be memorizing formulas, but then it is going to be knowing how to use those formulas, which is essential. Let's do one more of those, because I don't want to leave you with just doing one problem like that. Okay. I kind of wrote this out of order. I meant to put x squared plus y squared first, and then plus 8x plus 7. It's fine, though. So we have x squared plus 8x plus y squared plus 7 is equal to 0. Our first step, we said before, was we want to group the x's and the y's together. So the x's, we just have x squared plus 8x. And the y's, we only have y squared. Now, if we only have y squared, there's no like a number times y. There's no linear term. There's just the quadratic term, y squared. In that case, we don't actually have to group it together. We'll just leave y squared as it is. And then again, the 7, we want to make sure we move it over to the other side. So we'll subtract it. So it gives us a negative 7. Okay. Now we still need to mess with our first set of parentheses, x squared plus 8x. So what number are we going to have to add to that to complete the square? $16. Again, we take our 8 divided by 2, which is 4, and then take our 4 and then square it, which is 16, and so that's why we put that number in where it is. So again, divide by 2 and then square. So even though you'll have the formula for our standard form of a circle, I mean, this kind of concept right here, you'll have to memorize how to complete that square. It will be essential in solving this problem. So like I said, even though we have the formula, that's not the whole story. We still need to know how to do the individual steps. Outside of factoring, there's not a whole lot that we need to remember how to do for this first test, but that is one of the things. Okay. So, again, we add 16 here, and since we added 16 to the left-hand side of the equal sign, we go ahead and also add it to the right-hand side. How does this expression factor? What multiplies to 16 and adds up to 8? Yeah, both of them will be plus 4. And so we can go ahead and write it as x plus 4 squared. Now, this whole time we've been just leaving the y squared alone, which is fine. If there aren't any other y variable terms, then the y squared will just stand for itself. Because technically, it's still squared. This is squared, and this is squared. The question, though, what is our center? Negative 4. Yeah, this one, because we have x plus 4, again, setting it equal to 0, so we get x equals negative 4. Good. And this one, because there isn't a number subtracted or added, this one's a little tricky. That's why I want to give you a little more time to work on it, but it actually is 0. Because nothing is added or subtracted to the y that's being squared. and radius is 3. Good. But because we just have y squared, it's not plus or minus anything, we can assume when we see y squared, it's basically the same thing as saying y minus 0 squared, if we want to think of it like that. That's one that I've noticed does confuse students a bit, because we get used to recognizing, oh, the factorization, we did the completing the squares, we got this, and we just take the opposite. But if there's not a number there, then it's still just going to be a 0. That's the other thing I wanted to point out in this problem, is that with no number being added or subtracted from the variable, then it's just 0. Okay. Excuse me. Are there any questions on that? Okay. All right. I think we'll just leave it at that for today. There's really nothing else for us to cover. The review will be on Wednesday. So if you want to use this time to start looking at those review problems, you can. Once we go over the review in class on Wednesday, I'll make sure I post the key to that review as well, and then following that, I will make the test available. So you'll if you wanted to go ahead and take the test, then you could, or if you wanted to wait till the weekend, or if you wanted to wait till Monday next week, you can take the test then. But you'll have until Tuesday evening the following week to finish everything. So, but again, once you start, you'll only have that 2-hour block to finish it. So make sure it's a good time for you to work through the test. Any other questions? Okay. So I don't have any homework for you. I just want you to work on the review and go ahead and get started on that. That way, when we go over it in class on Wednesday, you'll have some experience with the problems already, and you'll have a better idea of maybe what you understand already versus what you need to work on, and help you prepare for the test. So everyone, have a good rest of the day. Take care, and I will talk to you again on Wednesday. Y'all have a good one.